Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Valuecast. Today's actually a mixture of, I would say, a traditional Valuecast, but also a Meet the Founder Valuecast. The reason why I say that is because we're actually talking about a topic that is quite important to me when it comes to workforce and procurement mixed together. But at the same time, you'll see a gentleman on the screen who asked to introduce himself in a second, who has been really making huge waves in the document management and spend analytics world, which is doing a lot for a lot of current businesses. So we're going to talk about creating strategic value when it comes to sort of SOW document management and spend management, and where we believe more can be done to help businesses get more sort of strategic value. But before we do it, another Alex is on the screen. Alex Grundy, nice to have you on.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Brilliant. Well, before we get into it, why don't you just give those that are taking the time to listen a little bit of an intro to yourself, how you got where you are right now?
Absolutely. So I am the co-founder and CEO of Spenky, and we're a company with a vision that started through me working as a strategic sourcing manager for roughly 20 years. And that vision is to provide better data for better deals. And in between data and deals, there's insights and action. And really that has been my vision since I started in procurement 20 years ago. And not much has changed.
Well, you've done well to hold on to that vision. Not many people can hold on to a vision for 20 plus years.
Yeah, I think, but has procurement changed that much in 20 years, right? Okay, if we park the technology, we all want better deals for better value, ultimately. So we could overcomplicate it. So we like to keep it relatively simple. Really, how do I get better value for the customer in a nutshell?
Makes sense. So what made you get to the position of moving away from your 20 years in procurement, managing deals, to actually creating Spenky?
A client, actually. So I was in a canteen 5 years ago, I think, and we'd done a diagnostic on a client, and we'd used the Gartner Magic Quadrant to run some spend analytics, and it was a supplier in the top quadrant, and we were using that tool, and we were underwhelmed by the outputs, if you like. And I was sat opposite my co-founder. We were doing a 8-week diagnostic as a consultant. And I said to him at the time, this can't be the best in the world, surely. And he agreed with me, and we did a bit of research. And it was at that exact point in time that we decided we were going to build a spend analytics platform that was designed for helping strategic sourcing managers and consultants. And effectively, that was the seed. All those years ago. So here I am going from the buy side to the dark side, and I now regret how hard I was on those suppliers all those years, and I'm begging them to be kind to me now.
Yeah, well, you're very lucky to have experience on both sides of the house, because you get to see what both pockets are like. But yeah, the fact is the money in each of those pockets is exactly the same. It's just how you approach it is slightly different from a different pocket.
There's a massive misconception that I probably gave to myself. I must know about sales because I've been, working with salesmen for part of my procurement career, and that was a massive misconception. So it is a totally different world being on this side of the fence to being a buyer. And I thought it would be, it'd be really similar. And, I know how it works. I've done enough tenders and all the rest of it, but there's a lot to learn when you make the switch, if anybody's thinking of it.
Oh God, yeah. Making that decision in that canteen, how many years ago was it now? You sat in that canteen?
So we founded Spenky in 2020.
2020. That's it. That's quite a long. That's quite a
November
long time.
2020. Yeah.
And did you feel in the early days it was, you spent a lot of time obviously focusing on developing a product that was going to work. How long do you think it actually took you to get to the level of the concept you wanted to deliver to clients? Because 5 years is a long time, isn't it? It's a huge amount of time.
Yeah. So I would say don't underestimate how long things take. And the to answer your question is I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with the product, right? And
Fair enough.
a lot of founders are guilty of falling into the trap of trying to get everything perfect before selling your product, and then if you do that, you're out of business. So the vision, I go back to that, is to provide better data for better deals, and in between that, insights and action, and we build on that. So our first release, might have been slightly better data. Our second release, better than that. Now we're talking about insights, recommendations, agents, and then autonomous sourcing and so on as we go into the action. So the technology, thankfully we started this before the boom in Gen AI. We actually released our document analytics 6 months after ChatGPT went live. So we were very quick to market, and we sold it within 6 months as well to two, listed companies.
Wow.
So we were very quick to market when Gen AI came out, and to take advantage of that. And that has proved a good bet in our journey from, building on, was the product good enough? Well, it would never be good enough, in my view, but we are getting incrementally better. And with technology, available to us now, that leap each time is taking, we're talking days and weeks now instead of months. So we're making huge leaps within weeks. And those leaps are also incrementally a lot better. So it's faster and a lot better. So, that compounding effect is the product's drastically changing, and will continue to do so, I believe, as a result of all the AI capability.
Yeah, well, definitely. And the discussions we've had in the past, you sort of getting from, because document analytics and spend analytics, it's a tricky one, right? When you're reading information and articulating that information to help that business provide strategy, you've got to be pretty accurate in the output that you're providing. And I think I remember, when we first started talking, the accuracy you weren't happy with, but it's getting closer and closer now to more of 100% accuracy in where you see the use of the agentic AI approach, and well, even further than that now. Do you feel that you ever get to that 100%, or do you feel that no one ever gets to that 100% because there's always a grey area when it comes to document analytics?
So we're at 100% for a lot of things, but of course, when you aggregate and look at total accuracy, which is what you do, it can just be one field on one document that makes the whole house collapse, right? But that could be an important field. So one thing, when we look at how do we address the lack of trust and lack of accuracy, we embrace it at Spenke. So we don't hide away from the errors in AI, if you like. I think that's really important, because otherwise, clients are just going to lose trust. So we don't say that we're perfect. We sell 95% accuracy out of the box without any fine tuning on any document in any format. So that's world class.
Very impressive.
It's to do that single shot without any training. So send us 1,000 documents and get, or 500,000 documents and get 95% accuracy tomorrow. We fine tune then to improve that level of accuracy, and there'll be, was it the difference between a telephone number and a vendor number? That's a mistake that happens in, I think it was one of the Asian countries. Certain languages have different nuances on different fields, and we start to see these patterns. So when you talk about the inaccuracy, when you know where it occurs, and that's what we do, is we are able to figure out where it's going wrong and share that. So we're very transparent. Look, here's where we're wrong. Then you can start to be able to get a very good, trustworthy data set, despite it not being right first time.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It actually mirrors the life of the founder, as you just mentioned earlier, right? You can't, the expectation of getting perfection day one. How often does that happen? And if you strive for it, but actually you've got to work towards to get it. But the fact you can, go 99.5% of accuracy, and then you're just working on the nuances, is pretty exceptional. The reason that we really came together, when we started working, because as you know, Alex, I am passionate about the procurement services, workforce industries. And I've worked mainly more on the workforce services side rather than sort of general sort of category management procurement, where you predominantly more come from in your history. But there's been a huge gap for how businesses are actually, I suppose, managing what you can class as rogue spend or SOWs that don't line up with contract values and maybe slip under the radar. But yeah, I don't think anyone had really nailed it, or at least got into a position where they've been able to provide a system that can help a business capture those things. And our discussions have really filtered around, well, how can we work together to fill that gap? When I look at your solution, it's perfectly matched for businesses that really have that gap in how they analyze SOW spend. Like, how do you feel about how businesses handle that sort of rogue lower tier spend?
So for me, spend analytics is a good starting point for enabling your strategy. The SOW analytics helps you execute it. So you're moving more into the detail. So you're moving away from, the AP data, the invoice descriptions, into the rate card. Let's just cut straight to it. So you can have, and that's once you have that level of granularity, you can start to do things a lot quicker, because you can start to recognize patterns at that rate card level. And I think that's a huge gap, because historically it's taken a lot of time, and it's always been very manual. I myself, actually, and this is when back in the day at Credit Suisse, I used to sit there and manage consultancy spend, and we'd have two big file effects on the desk, and we'd get, SOWs coming through, and we'd check the rates against the MSA, and we'd find, 50, 100K of savings every couple of weeks just through a couple of days' work. But it was a couple of days' work for two people every couple of weeks. I mean, it's going back some time now. But you were finding, that was just straightforward. You charged us the wrong rate, Mr. Consultant. Alignment to the rate card. So discrepancies, we'd find a lot. And I think there's so much more now that can be done, because we're removing that need for, to spend those 4 days every 2 weeks. We can now do things at scale a lot quicker. We can do 10,000 documents in a minute, and get all of this at the touch of a button. And the cost of doing it is a fraction, probably a couple of percent what it would take if you were to do it manually with people. So that means you can do a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the big things that I've always seen in the sort of workforce arena, the amount of spend that sort of goes through an SOW, but actually, are they really what you would call traditional consulting, or actually are they inside or outside the IR35? You know, that it's very difficult sometimes to uncover why that is being spent and what it's being spent for, and actually should we be spending that way? And when I look at your solution, I think it helps unpick that piece for businesses. So if they've got like you've been through a recent case study, right, where you've had a client, I think you said you had a client who just like literally had a dump of SOW spend data or contingent spend. Half of it's in a VMS, half of it's sort of generally in an MSP program. Then you've got the spend that's just sat outside of it. Like, if you're owning that program, having a solution like yours would help remove any, I suppose, lack of knowledge of what's going on with your data, because that's the whole reason for it, right?
Yeah. So to your point, stuff that goes through preferred channels, you may have visibility of. With this client where we ran the spend analytics, the difference in temporary contingent labor was 500x. So, it's 5 times what they thought they were spending, which is huge. So that's a lot of spend going through a non-preferred channel, but in this particular example, but that isn't unusual. So that might sound alarming, but that's standard. And I think you mentioned sort of rogue spend or maverick spend, which is, I don't necessarily agree with that terms. I think people are always trying to do the best for what they can. It's just to call them rogues, but everybody understands what it means.
Exactly.
And we all know that spend that's gone through a rigorous process is going to be aligned to a better deal, and spend that hasn't mainly leads to a worse deal. And there's plenty of data to back that up, by the way. So if you're not following a rigorous process, you're paying way over the odds. And I'm just going to go on the whole commercial side of it for now. There's a whole bunch of other risks around having people in your business, exposure to regulation, as you mentioned, etc., etc. We can go into a bit later on. But yeah, the just the whole commercial leakage of not not following a rigorous process for 500% of your temporary labor spend is really criminal. You're wasting money.
Well, yeah, most definitely. And not only that, what we're not trying to do here is provide a solution that is going to rip up process and change process. It's basically just been able to, highlight where things can improve, right? And you can make decisions, because I think, when people look at a lot of platforms and solutions that are out there, everyone's first thought is around automation. But I take a step back, and I know you take a step back too. It's not about general automation. It's about augmenting and using the technology you've got in hand to help improve strategy, right? And I think that's quite a big piece of what you're trying to do. Because if you've just highlighted with that said client X amount of spend that is, let's not call it rogue, that is being contracted but not being governed correctly. Let's use that word. Ungoverned spend maybe is a better phrase for it. You've just suddenly got all this wonderful analytics that have just come in to help you physically go, well, hold on a minute here. We've got 20 suppliers providing similar services, all at different rates. Didn't have that before, So do you believe that really is one of the core values of what you're trying to do with Spenky is improve the use of technology to augment process rather than just automate, which we see a lot of today?
Yeah, effectively make a recommendation as accurately as possible that's backed up by data, so that executives can make a decision in a nutshell. So we all know how hard it is to sell in any sort of program or anything, especially in this space. You're fighting for budget internally a lot of the time. So if you've got a narrative that is backed up by data, then you're able to then create that change. And a lot of that change might be very simplistic. It might be waste, you're turning stuff off. It might be policy tweaks. It might be very simple changes that can create a huge impact on that let's call that 500x of ungoverned spend very quickly. So within a few months or weeks, you can start stopping things or changing things, and then you can get more sophisticated and do some strat sourcing, right? And you can look at consolidation and preferred supplier lists and renegotiation and all of that stuff, all off the back of having this data at your fingertips, ready to go.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff happens a lot quicker when you can see what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's it's two different things, right? It's, putting the data in and getting it out, but then it's the visualization of what that looks like as well in the platform. It's a shame we don't actually have your platform, unless you're able to show it, to actually show the value of what can be seen. Because I think half the problem I see sometimes is that people can bring data in, but what you can't actually do is then represent it to the person who needs to see the data in a way that is manageable.
I can show you. I won't show you a live demo now. I mean, people can book a live demo. I can show you a small 30-second, 1-minute video clip, which can which can bring it to life. And the bit that I can, I'll just find the video and share my screen. There we go. Is that my screen sharing now?
Yeah, you're sharing it.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So I'll click play in a moment. This is a typical spend dashboard. So the process of normalizing suppliers, and don't get me wrong when I say this quite casually. So the process of normalizing suppliers can be hugely beneficial to companies. I mean, we've just actually freed up 60 million in working capital just on normalization of suppliers for one of our clients. So where you've got parent-child relationships, and often some companies owned by groups or private equity, where can we get that single view of where they roll up to and at what level? So you might have multiple suppliers or multiple entities that all roll up into the same parents, and that alone is very useful. So rather than buying at the entity level, you want to buy at the parent level. Instead of buying 10 1 million deals, you buy 110, right? Pretty basic stuff, but a lot of people just never get around to this. Also, clients may think they do it until they do it properly, and there can be a dramatic improvement when you do it properly. If you haven't got a rigorous process in place. And then categorizing a spend, those of you that the procurement listeners will know all about, taxonomies and category trees and subcategories. So once you've cleansed and categorized your spend, you'll get a view that looks like this. There are hundreds of other views, but you can see here temporary labor at 6 million. So you've got your HR spend at 9 million, a segment of that at 6, and then your temporary labor is split out into temporary staffing and individual contractors. So this is super interesting, looking at it through a supplier and spend lens. Number of suppliers, number of transactions, lots of things around, can reduce the number of transactions, can reduce the number of suppliers to gain efficiencies there. Sorry, Alex, were you about to say something?
No. I was just saying, okay. No, it makes sense because I'm logically looking at it from left to right.
Excellent. The part that I'm going to show you now, so this is where I've clicked play on the video, is processing of an SOW. So this is an SOW being uploaded to the system. What you can see here on the left-hand side, I've just paused it, is a rate card. So you've got a start and end date. You can't quite see it because it's probably a little bit blurred, but it's start and end date and a rate against that particular role. So very typical of an SOW. Nowhere in this document does it say the total value of this SOW. So what the AI is able to do is add context and meaning So we can work out the estimated value, and it's also flagging there again for transparency. How have we calculated that particular value? So we've taken the number of working days and times it by the rate. So not rocket science, but again, it's not in the document. Therefore, we have to use a level of intelligence. Going back to
just going back to what you said. Sorry, just going back to what you said earlier, though. So this is where you're taking it from, the 90 whatever percent to the 100% by utilizing AI to help validate, actually validate and fill the gaps.
So we have 3 configuration modes. So this is the 95% accuracy out of the box, 0 shot, without fine tuning on any SOW in any language, in any format. So it's anything. Again, send us it in Japanese, Chinese, Hebrew, doesn't matter. And even some of the Slavic language where there's only a few thousand speakers of it, we're able to get that level of accuracy. So the configuration modes you're seeing, so we will always, even if the client doesn't necessarily need us to, we often recommend saying, look, we extract everything from the document, and we do that with 100% accuracy. And we do that because then once it's done, we can go back to it and reference and pull other data. The data schema here in the middle is what the client has requested. So you'll see things like the start date, the end date, the estimated value. So the client has asked us for these particular values, and if I was to play this video, it will list them out, the number of workers, the structure, is this a fixed price, variable price. So we can start to then say, here's the schema that we're mapping the document against, and we have another configuration mode to validate the results. And the architecture, the AI architecture, is we use lots of different models to get these results, and multiple agents that were specifically designed to focus on a specific task within the processing of the document, and agents that will also validate the other agents' work. And this multi-layered approach gets you to a very accurate result of, without any training, any volume of documents, 95%. And I say as we train, we can get as close to 100 as possible.
Okay.
And if I were to play the rest of the video, I won't play much more. So that's sort of SOW analytics, and this could be consultancy as well. We're looking at that as well. The difference then in the dashboard between spend and documents is this, really. So nowhere in spend analytics do you identify the number of workers, whereas in the SOW analytics we will. And we're able then to have all of these, this in this instance is 12 SOWs. You could have 12,000 SOWs in here, and you're able to go in and see, in this particular example, this is the rate card now that we've extracted from that SOW and the estimated value. Wow. So there's huge amounts of detail here. So we've got the 10 workers that are in this SOW, and these are the rates, and we're onshore, offshore, all of that good stuff, and the work that they're doing. And of course, we can do categorization of roles as well. So how do we, when we have lots of different SOWs where people call the same thing, lots of different things, how do we normalize? So the same as we would with categorizing our suppliers and our spend transactions, we can categorize roles as well, which is important to note. So you can get a very good view of well, this is what I pay for a BW developer in these countries.
Amazing. No, that's super helpful. Sorry, I know it was only a question around actually visualizing it, and you've probably shown a lot more than what I was actually looking for there. But no, that's really interesting, because the whole schema, let's just remove that anyway. The whole schema piece is quite eye-opening, really. So you can even, rather than just sort of general analytics, you can, configure it so that you can tailor the output to gain a specific, areas that still need validating, which then drives the output in the dashboard. So super helpful. Like, I've worked in this industry for, like you have, in procurement, for 23 odd years, but it's always an area that just gets overlooked. and I've never really understood it. It's like an area of spend that it's like, okay, it's, you know, it's statement of work, it's procurement's job, but actually no, what it's your spend, right? It doesn't matter whether you're spending it on people or services. At the end of the day, you need to have, you need to be able to analyze it and understand why you're spending it. And I'd always found it a bit strange why it was never sort of included within that sort of whole package. But I think that's changing, right? Do you see businesses changing the way they're approaching the management of spend?
I think probably there's a lot more pull factor now for better data, and it's been increasing, you know, over the last 5 years or so, but now it's expected. So some of the stuff that I've shown you there, there's an appetite now to consume it, whereas 5 years ago perhaps there wasn't. So I think everybody's looking for something new to find growth, either that earnings growth or whatever it may be, entering new markets, etc. Where can I find an opportunity? And of course, most of the old things have been done, so this is new, so it
Yeah,
hasn't been done. So
yeah,
by that very nature, it's new technology and it's a not new opportunity. Okay, yes, you can be doing things manually, but the percentage of people that bother because of the cost and the ROI is very few. So some of the stuff now that the affordability of these solutions and the breadth of scope of coverage and the sheer volume of scale, you know, hundreds of thousands of documents, millions of documents in minutes, just means that you can do this stuff now for peanuts. You know, so those big pockets of SOW spend that, you know, you want to get into the details with now, you can do, and it can be done very quickly.
yeah. And then you can put whatever process you leave process as is and carry on doing things the way you do, or you use that data to help improve, you know, move into new markets, improve efficiencies. There's a number of benefits, right, of being able to just analyze it. It's just being able to do it. But you're right. I think years have gone by where I've seen many. I was part of a provider myself where, you know, you're providing analytics and dashboards and all these flash things, but actually what is actually using it and what value are they getting from it? But I think what you're demonstrating today is that the world has changed vastly in the last, you know, 12 to 24 months, where the power that or your platform and others are providing is really helping businesses, you know, drive further forward. So excellent. Well, look, you actually covered a bit more than I thought we were going to cover today. I did want to pivot back a little bit to your business and what's next, because, you know, you've been a founder now for 5 years of Spenky specifically, and you know what's next in the journey. Like, where do you see things going from here, and what other advancements in technology do you think are going to help drive your business further forward? Two quite big questions. Sorry.
So what's next and what tech? So what's next? For Spenky, staying true to our vision, better data, better insights, better action, better deals is core. So what does that mean in terms of our product offering? So we have 3 products at the moment. We have our spend analytics, our document and SOW analytics, and our budgeting module. The big gap for me, the big gap between spend and document analytics, I think, is finding that insight and making that recommendation by linking the two. So the relationship between, first of all, documents themselves. So we have a agent that is just designed as multiple agents just to link documents together. So you can imagine if you've got a 20-year relationship with a supplier and all these change control days and all these MSAs and all of these different standalone agreements and then all of these SOWs. So we link all of those documents together. So that's live, you know, and that's a really new and interesting offering, the value you can get from linking documentation. The linking that then to spend obviously, as the spend analytics then creates a more holistic view. The next stage is recommendations. So once we've linked the documents, linked it to spend, the recommendation makes the recommendation. It's a recommendation agent. And the level of sophistication, let's say, that goes into the recommendation is where we go next. So we're a data company. We're all about data. And our platform is not a platform that requires a lot of training, a lot of implementation, and a huge setup. We're data driven, so we tend to do all the hard work and play that back, which means it's hugely scalable to ingest lots of data. And the recommendation gets more and more sophisticated. And that's really, we're using neurosymbolic AI, which is a new methodology and a new way of looking at data. And this is closing that gap between, well, you can stick anything into a large language model and get a recommendation, and between actually that's really worth us taking action on. So how do we link the documents to the spend to make a recommendation that isn't just a generic, do X. So that's our roadmap, if you like, for the next 6 to 9 months.
Cool. Well, there you go. You actually linked, both questions into one. You need to segregate. Brilliant. Well, I'm very conscious of time, Alex, because I've taken more time than you gave me. So thanks very much. My final question is, how do you keep yourself going every single day? What keeps you motivated?
Coffee. I've got two young daughters at the moment, so one 3 months and the other 18. So a lot of coffee keeps me going. It's sleepless nights, but jokes aside, I think we know that we can help clients with our offering, and that's what keeps us going, because it's there's the knowing that actually I can provide a lot of value, and then seeing it being delivered is why we all get up in the morning and go to work. And it's great to know that if you give me your data, I know I can find you. And I'll say, we sell an 8x ROI, but in that's because the finance guys we have to sell into, won't believe you when you tell them it's 100x, but it is. We all know that spend and document, the value that's trapped in this data is absolutely huge, and we can unlock it. And knowing that we can do that when you're I'm now on the sell side, so I'm speaking to the former me in procurement, if you like, and saying, look, we understand the problem because we've been working in procurement for 20 years, and we've got a solution that we know with confidence is going to help solve this particular pain point. It's what keeps us going. And I think it's so exciting now to the pace of execution within software. So when I started this 5 years ago, our sprints and our development, we weren't able to, develop at the pace or the rate that we're developing at the moment. We can create agents that do some mind-blowing stuff in days, whereas rewind 5 years ago, it'd take us 6 months just to create a simple a simple algorithm for categorizing spend, if you like. So that's what's quite exciting, is the pace now. I don't know how we all keep up with it, if I'm honest, but it's certainly a very interesting time.
It's probably good that you've got young children, because they grow and evolve quickly, just as quickly as, not quite as quick as the technology market, but that's good. No, it's interesting because I just wrapping back to when you started talking, again though, it's that core vision and values that is still constant in your mind, which is what's important about it all, really, isn't it? So well, Alex, thank you ever so much for your time. Much appreciated. And I hope whoever's taken the time to listen to this has found some value from it. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much, Alex.